Well, in the end, I guess it was only a practice.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can get a big return on FanDuel. New customers, you place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And where we get started is what Mick Cronin had to say. He had his Q&A released by UCLA Athletics. He met with the media. A lot of eager questions with the build practice opened up to the media and some film coming out about the intensity about the Bruins defensively and how deep they are. And the biggest story of the day, ironically enough, it was really only a practice that Cronin controlled in the San Diego State scrimmage game, closed door, bona fide practice, was that he stopped the game, do a clear five, do a clear line change, and did that over and over again. Or so he makes us think. But yes, generally, these closed-door scrimmages are a very controlled environment, even if they're written up by the San Diego Union Tribune, even if I make a big deal out of it, even if there's literally a box score with how many minutes people played. Cronin really shrugged things off when talking about that scrimmage, about, hey, I'm not too concerned. And I think he went on to say, quote, to the media, you know what? If it's not really a real game, I just look at it as a chance to get better, was really the emphasis he seemed to put. Not a full-on quote from what I'm saying. I don't want to put words in Mick Cronin's mouth, but basically what he's saying there is, if the lights aren't on and we're not playing a real game, I'm trying to learn about my team against a San Diego State team that, yes, still was without their best players. And the Bruins, when you compiled all the scores together, they were losing. It was still a chance to say, hey, this is what's up. And that's what the San Diego State coach, Brian Dutcher, was saying to the San Diego Union Tribune. Yeah, he's not going to play equal minutes between 11 guys, all playing 11 minutes or more. But still, the concerns were the Bruins getting pummeled in the paint and not converting points off turnovers and shooting poorly. But we do think, and I do think, UCLA will have ways to combat that during the season. So all the, hey, Final Four, all the super expectations, that top 3 Big Ten preseason finish, UCLA is as deep as advertised. And despite our best efforts to figure it out, I think Mick Cronin, I think a little bit with what he had to say today, he's still figuring out which combinations to play. And they won't be the same starting 5 as the closing 5, which I've kind of thought would be the case. This is a UCLA guard-heavy lineup that I liked what Mick Cronin had to say. He talked about in one of the 2 big media availabilities released lately from UCLA that, hey, he's going to go with a bit of a 4-guard lineup, right? It's not necessarily a power forward. It's kind of a 3 guards and a big guard at the 4. And UCLA always likes to have bigger, more athletic, big wingspan guys, and then tends to have an undersized center. Yes, UCLA does have their 7'3" Spaniard, but they want guys who can be tough-nosed, play gritty defense. And this year, Mick Cronin emphasized guys who can put the ball in the basket. And one of the big quotes that Cronin was able to note was that the guys who can put the ball in the basket, his best scoring 5 is not the same as his best defensively, right? Because if you add that, I think if you put your scorers in there, that number would include Dylan Andrews as the point. Your number 2, I think, might be Sebastian Mack or Sky Clark. Bilodeau's in there. And then your 5 would probably be Eric Daly Jr. as a scorer. Bilodeau is the 4. Kobe Johnson. And I think that would be the 5 he's talking about. He did not specify as to what his best scoring offense would be and is in this day and age. And then he talked about how he's got his best defensive 5, which could be William Kyle at the 5. Could be maybe Daly Jr. at the 4, Kobe Johnson. Maybe a guy like Stefanovic, who Cronin emphasized, got a lot stronger, just like a Daimata, got a lot more skilled defensively or worked on it, could be in that defensive 5. And then you mix in a Mack who got a lot of steals, or Clark and Dylan Andrews. those 5 are different. And I could try and pick your brain. We could pick each other's brain going back and forth about who that might be. But depending on the situation, if UCLA is down 10, Cronin's going to go all offense, and he's going to go with his best offensive weapons and maybe sacrifice a couple of points because he can get guys who can get hot from 3 in a hurry. As repeatedly said, Dominic Harris, the quote is, he can hit 3 threes in a row and the game has changed. And that's the quote that's been said about the former Gonzaga, the former LMU player who has come into the program for UCLA. The guy who can light it up in a hurry, all right? So Mick Cronin was using that in that San Diego State game, more of a bona fide practice. All right, cool, And yes, I guess it's my job to hype it up, get all crazy. But, the glaring numbers we saw was the fact that UCLA could not handle the size in the paint. They could not get the rebounds. And yes, UCLA shot terribly, but I would like the Bruins to be able to hit the boards, hit the glass, and find ways to score in the paint. Because, yes, they can shoot from the outside, but they're going to throw up a lot of bricks, regardless of how much better they look or statistically they are. They could still be a better, quicker playing version of last year where they threw up a lot of bricks. If UCLA is going to have a lot of volume, it doesn't make them a lot better offensively. Now, they are a lot better offensively. Last year's freshman-laden, young squad, very youthful. The youthful energy is gone with the veteran team that is expected to do big things this year. All right. So the backcourt, Cronin's still figuring it out. The San Diego State game, still a work in progress, and a lot more we'll talk about next. There's one player I thought that was interesting because I'd been thinking one thing, and Cronin finally comes out and says he's thinking another about a specific player and his role that could come up, and more. A Locked on UCLA. What's up, UCLA fans? It's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we've pulled over $20,000 to support players in Roy. Those micro deposits lead to massive change. With the Roy app, you can directly support the athletes you love, ensuring all the funds go to the specific player you choose. Because unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. The athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. This week, I'm going to support Carson Swessinger. I've just pitched in $100, and I'd love for you to join me. Even $10 makes a difference. Let's show Carson Swessinger the love and keep him connected to the school. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets the team up for success. Roy's exciting giveaway includes 2 tickets to a game in November. Download Roy, create an account, enter the referral code Locked On, and you're entered. If you're already on, any contribution to an athlete's campaign helps you get entered automatically. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. Roy, support the players, change the game. Again, right here, second segment, Locked On UCLA Podcast. Zach with you guys. The one thing Mick Cronin was talking about was he mentioned specifically Eric Daly Jr., and I've talked about how he was used as a small ball 5 against Oklahoma State. He will be used this year. The former Cowboy turned UCLA Bruin. He can score. He's got an improved shooting stroke on top of what was already a better than 30% three-point shooting marker last year at Oklahoma State, where he started in the starting lineup and then became a key role player, small ball 5 for a Big 12 team. Moves to UCLA. I thought maybe that's a small ball 5 role. I looked at that initial starting lineup. Maybe that's how it's going to work. And then Cronin, I forget whether it's to the media or in that Q&A session, where he came out and said, I don't really want to use him in that role, which is interesting and makes that center spot more intriguing. Where does UCLA go if you've got a healthy Adai Mara, a guy who's skilled that can hold his own? Cronin talking about him saying if he can hold his own physically with his strength in the paint offense and defense, we can finally see the skills that has been proclaimed over and over again for the 7-3 Spaniard. I think UCLA, as I've been going with, will go with William Kyle III. But if UCLA is not going to use, or if Mick Cronin doesn't truly want to use Eric Daly Jr. as the 5, a small ball 5, I know he might, depending on how the game goes, and what Cronin always likes to say, and what he said again, players make the starting lineup based on how they play. that's going to be an interesting rotation battle because Cronin hasn't fully figured out what's the backcourt that's going to start and will close. Do you go for the quick blitz for scoring and then go with the relentless pressure? Do you go with the more athletic option when it comes to somebody who can play and defend the full court with the upcoming pressure? UCLA is going to place full court in the backcourt, forcing Dylan Andrews to play a lot less minutes and most likely be a bit more efficient with his time spent on the floor and hopefully his shot making when he doesn't have to play 35 minutes. And then you look at the center, do you go athletic? Or do you go with William Kyle III and have the rim protector who wants to be a Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year award winner, according to Mick Cronin, after he was the Summit League Defensive Player of the Year? Those are all interesting things. I'm now wondering what it looks like when that Cal State LA starting lineup comes out. When we'll see a real rotation, we will see UCLA press, and they'll be up-tempo. Cronin's touting that. We're not going to need to ride the 35-minute per game point guard position like it was Tiger Campbell, like it was Dylan Andrews. Something's gone very wrong if UCLA plays a regulation game and the point guard, whoever it is at this moment starting in Dylan Andrews or whoever in the guard position is playing, maybe other than Kobe Johnson, is playing 35 minutes with the amount of depth UCLA has. I think something would have gone wrong because the relentless pressure UCLA will put on opponents, right? They forced, according to the stat sheet, 24 turnovers against San Diego State, who was without their starting, backcourt, according to reports. UCLA, they're going to guard full court. That's what I've been talking about for a long time. Cronin said it on podcast. That's the type of defense he wants to run. We won't see, I think, a slower UCLA team. We will see quick, agile. They'll want to score. They'll want to turn points into quick defense, right? Because how do you set up the full court press? You got to score. And then what this press normally leads to? Fast break points, layups, easy points in the paint, kick out threes, transition. And if UCLA isn't doing any of that, that's probably when we'll see them struggle if they're losing the rebounding battle, if they're forced to slow down. When in years previous, UCLA would play tough-nosed half-court defense and be very relentless in the late-game traps in the full court. Now that you don't have to rely on the Tiger Campbells or the Dylan Andrews of the world having to play all those minutes, the Bruins will showcase what I believe and what Cronin wants, a different brand of basketball that should be more exciting and more entertaining to watch. Because let's be real, UCLA basketball has not been entertaining to watch offensively, right? They have not been the type of team, the type of program under Mick Cronin, maybe ever since the Lonzo Ball teams for Steve Alford, where, yes, they like to score. They could do some high-flying things. Mick Cronin is not necessarily that type of coach that has had the players to do that when revitalizing the UCLA program from where it was falling to all those mid-major losses in that final year, half season under Steve Alford. Now, the Bruins, there's ways to grow, but it's a team that is built on depth and will use it again and again and again, large in point in case, to force defensively. So it's not seeing Daly Jr. in that small ball five. I just wonder if they're going to post three guys further up the floor, one guy just ride the point guard, two guys at half court. I just wonder the ways Mick Cronin is going to go, right? You've seen some of the three-quarters court press Oregon used last year to force UCLA into numerous turnovers and an eventual 2 out of 3 losses, which Oregon rode to an unexpected NCAA tournament berth from the Pac-12 tournament, beating UCLA and Eugene where they just turned it over. Now I think UCLA will be able to turn the favor and return the favor to Oregon this year in 2 matchups, return the favor into multiple games against these other Big Ten opponents, other non-conference opponents. But as we've seen with what Cronin said in the schedule, it's a slow buildup. They're not ready to go face the best of the best yet, which we'll find out in mid-December when they play 3 top 10, 3 top 15 expected opponents in a 2-week span. That is when UCLA should have hit their stride, should know the rotation, and we will finally understand how good this UCLA team is, barring any unexpected losses in early to mid-November. We won't learn about the men's basketball team's strengths and weaknesses other than maybe obvious rebounding things. If they can't out-rebound, Ryder in game 1, we won't know what they look like until they go play North Carolina, until they play Arizona, until, yes, and you hear it keep going and going and going, all right? That's what we're seeing out of UCLA now, and what we're going to see later in the season. So it's interesting to see how Cronin wants to utilize those guys and who will get the consistent starting roles, and more importantly, who the finishing five, the closing five, will be. Next, let's talk about the good news sort of the day. UCLA baseball has a home again. Yes, it's where you think, but will that be their future forever home? We'll talk about it next on Locked On UCLA. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to know, from live to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place, because you can get that hunch in the middle of the game. Check out latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. First $5 bet, $150 in bonus bets. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, here we go. Let's talk about the UCLA baseball diamond. It's been a story that's somewhat been in the works in recent weeks, and I think UCLA has a temporary solution that could potentially turn into a long-term answer, or at least they know where they need to look. This was reported on the LAist website earlier this morning on October 29th. So what happened, right? According to McKenna Sievertson, who wrote this article early in the morning, October 29th, this is a battle between UCLA, who is using Jackie Robinson Stadium, and the practice field, which is currently on a Veterans Affairs campus in West LA. A federal judge had ordered initially that UCLA had to get off the field. It's basically locked. This is for veterans. They are not using it properly. They're not paying, or, it was just not something for UCLA to be using in the way that it is, as opposed to its federal land. It should be used more for veterans. A lawsuit that happened back in 2022. This is what happened in 2022, which is why we're having problems in 2024. It comes from a discrimination lawsuit, according to the LAist article, filed by a group of veterans in November 2022, who argued that disabled veterans relying on the VA, Veterans Affairs Medical Services, needed more housing near the West LA campus. So then there is an order from the judge that needed more temporary housing, more permanent units that needed to be built on that land that actually has the baseball stadium. So that's the problem, right? It's basically what is not exactly being said as an improper use of lands, but unofficially being said, hey, you're using this for baseball, we need this for veterans. That's what but it was a lease. It was already an agreement from the people who have the land saying to UCLA, we'll lease you, you pay it. UCLA had been paying $300,000 to use the land. Now, what is the answer? What is the answer that they've come up with? Well, UCLA is going to have temporary access. You look at some schedules, you see some teams, they're playing at UCLA this year, right? Last year, USC, they didn't have a home. They're building things. They're building a new stadium. UCLA might have to do the new thing, which is UCLA has a home field this year at Jackie Robinson Stadium. This year, they have temporary access from the latest order from Judge David O. Carter that accepted a UCLA proposal to use the facility that is leased from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs that they were forced to leave last month. That's from the article, quote, be quote. The temporary lease and order allows UCLA the temporary access until July 4th, 2025, which means it would allow UCLA all the way through the College World Series, basically, to go clean up things if they go on a big run under John Savage this year. And then UCLA can negotiate with the VA affairs. They can negotiate. They can maybe have an exit strategy. But the other thing is UCLA has nearly $600,000 in rent to be paid. That is to be paid in the next 2 weeks. All right. So you wonder where all this Big Ten money is going. Imagine if UCLA didn't have this Big Ten deal, right? You're sitting there in a deficit, this media rights deal. This is probably part of the reason why Martin Germain was making the decision, why Gene Block, before he retired. This is why UCLA made the decision. The athletic department needs money. All these athletic departments need money because everybody wants to be paid. Here, that, everything. They want to pay to broadcast games. They want to be paid to play games. All right. And I'm not talking about whether you agree or disagree with the decision. That's double the rent. So UCLA has to pay more than $500,000 in rent just to play baseball in the next 2 weeks at its home facility, on top of, right, paying $10 million to the University of California out in Berkeley. So think about all this money that they're just spending to exist, all right? They got to pay probably close to millions of dollars to construct a new baseball stadium on top of the $600K that's going to the Veterans Affairs land. And then you pay $10 million annually just to Cal, just to exist for being in the Big Ten. A school, mind you, that's in the ACC, all right, and doing a little bit better than UCLA in football, as much as I hate to admit it. All right, like, just think of what they're doing. It's a greater decision, all right? I haven't plucked Martin's brain necessarily, the UCLA athletic director, but man, some of it, yes, is to get a greater national standing, to get more national attention, put UCLA's brand out there, make more money, all that stuff. But all these players are trying to get paid directly, the men and the women, in any sport. NIL bucks, whether it's direct payment, NIL, filling up seats, filling up the AD, everything is costing more nowadays in 2024. And that's part of the reason why they went to the Big Ten. They don't have to pay these things. Now, some of the veterans are disappointed. This is what Bob Reynolds said, a veterans associate, told the LAist. It's just really unfortunate that they're coming back on and only giving $600,000. They pay their coach more, John Savage, more money than what they're offering for the use of that baseball stadium. And according to what the article used in the University of California employee pay data, because UCLA is a public institution, you can see what all those people are making. John Savage made $848,000 in gross pay last year, according to that University of California employee pay data. So the veterans are still frustrated that they're not paying, right? It's like, do you pay your rent a lot? Is it affordable baseball stadium housing, if you will? Is it supposed to go here? All we know is that UCLA has a home, all right? Now, I hope that there's no protest of any sorts to the UCLA baseball stadium, and this has been a big thing that's happened in recent years. All we know is that what UCLA needs is probably a new home, all right? Martin Germain came out and said, our young men have been working hard and keeping a positive attitude throughout this period of uncertainty, and we are pleased that they will be able to resume their regular training at the stadium. They've been practicing, I think, at Birmingham, all right? A city school, local, nearby. I think it's Birmingham. It's one of those schools close by. UCLA has been practicing at a high school facility. So everybody's frustrated, and I'm just like, I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't think the best case scenario is to kick them out right now and leave this baseball team in the dust. Because I think as much as the veterans are frustrated in this situation, and, considering that I don't understand, not that I don't understand their plight, I'm just not in their shoes, and I'm speaking from a UCLA perspective, I think this is a best case scenario. Not a best case scenario, because the best case scenario is them working on a deal and they don't have to build any stadium at all. I understand what the veterans say, all right? They need the housing. It's that land. That's what it should be used for. Cool. That's a whole nother debate. Keeping UCLA in that stadium at least through the end of the 2025 season gives UCLA a whole 9 months of sorts, 8 to 9 months to plan, all right? That's enough. That's like a pregnancy of sorts, right? You got a trimester. You got this. At this point, make plans, choose a plan, start somewhere. They can start calling all these other places because there is going to be no stadium available to utilize if they wait to the last minute. All right. This very well might be the last season used for Jackie Robinson as a UCLA baseball facility. Right. It's a cute little thing, but I think UCLA maybe is in need for an upgrade. So it can be utilized as a reason to go after go ask some donors, go ask people and say, hey, we're going to build a nice new UCLA facility. This is what happens. And I think it's time for UCLA to have some of these best college baseball teams, they have some really beautiful facilities or iconic venues. And they can go make Jackie Robinson Stadium 2, hopefully on their own land. I'm not sure exactly where that would be. Where could UCLA play last year? Last year, USC bounced around between UC Irvine, the OC Great Park, and LMU for home games. And all their midweeks were almost always road games for USC last year. That is probably what's in the card for UCLA. I guess I don't have off the top of my head how quickly this USC baseball stadium will be built. If it's already ready or not, I don't have that off the top of my head right now. But hey, they got to start making calls for temporary usage, where to build, how to construct, what's the design, and maybe they could still find a way to build all this or not have to do it at all and come to some agreement. All right? Do they triple their payment from $600,000 to something else, and that's going to make them happy? I don't know. I understand the plight. I understand, hey, maybe I just said I don't, but, it looks like UCLA for now has a 2025 home. Maybe not further, but that's something that all this Big Ten media rights money is going to have. All the donors, getting a new stadium, maybe Jackie Robinson Stadium 2. All right? But it's not a full-time solution, just a short-term solution. There's people unhappy. Everybody's always going to be unhappy with the public decision. All right? If it came out the other way, UCLA would have been completely dissatisfied with how they were a month ago when they were kicked out of their own stadium. All right? There's probably more behind-the-scenes things that we don't know, back and forth, that we're just not privy to at this moment. For now, UCLA is at home. They can play there. The schedules are out. When you go to play UCLA, you're going to Jackie Robinson Stadium. Probably no parking, but there will be baseball there. And this is a nice reason to go build a nice, beautiful baseball facility where I'm not that decision maker, but it's got to be decided soon. All right. So get your hands up, UCLA fans. They got all that and everything more. Get your hands up. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Download, like, subscribe. Go Bruins!